Hello everyone, how's it going? In this video, we will talk about MMTLP. So MMTLP has attracted a lot of attention over the past few weeks and months in the traders community, mostly because of the volatilities as well as the promise of major short squeezes as a result of the S1 approval, which at the time was uncertain and has now been confirmed. So this company is very impressive in the sense that despite the very unfavorable environment it is operating in, it has able to break through like the overall sell-off or bearish environment and to provide us new highs after new highs. In this video, we're going to talk about whether you should be buying, selling, or holding MMTLP shares, as well as what lies in the future for the stock. As always, if you appreciate what I do, please consider to drop a like, subscribe to my channel, and check out the links down in the description. So, before we start the video, I'd just like to state a brief disclaimer about what my video is about and what it shouldn't be. What is presented here is going to be my opinion and my interpretation of how things are and probably will be. They're not investment advice and should be watched for entertainment purposes only. They may be able to help you make more educated decisions, but it should not be the only source of your decision-making process. So most of my analysis is done in the immediate past or just a few days before the uploading of the videos, and the price action may no longer reflect what you see on the chart by the time you see this video, but it's still going to be useful and relevant for the future analysis. Sometimes with the benefit of hindsight, we can then start to see some patterns forming. The past sometimes suggests the present, and the present may suggest what lies ahead for the future. And this is often why we analyze this chart to begin with. Also, the analysis will try to cover the stock as comprehensively as possible, not just the latest news or price actions. So, with that being said, let's begin with today's video. Recently, it was announced that MMTLP would go through a merger, and that the consequence of this merger would be some major changes in the short positions, if they're still open. In other words, a lot of those short positions would be compelled to be closed or to redeemed once the S1 approval goes through. That is my understanding of how things will be. It is an interesting situation in that now that S1 has been approved, MMTLP could probably take its price to new highs, which on Monday it has so far. The general mood in the trading community is joyful, to say the least, as the expectation is sky high, just like the price. And the shorts will probably want to cover their positions, and if they do, they will have to wait about 15 days to be fully covered. This would be caused by the usual daily volume of MMTLP compared to the sheer size of the short position. Over the past few days, the stock price of MMTLP resumed its bullish push and has now made new highs going to the $10 level. The stock has been trading between, $8 to $9 for some time, and previously I've said that probably we're going to see some pullbacks, which is only normal for a stock that has made new highs very recently. Now, this reality has now been changed as the S1 approval has occurred, and now whatever reserves that we may have on paper about MMTLP are gone. So in theory, the stock should make new highs over the next few days, and I do believe that with the energy price where it is and like the reserve potential of the merged entity, it's probably going to go higher before any sort of pullbacks would occur. So far, the online discussions suggest that there is a high amount of optimism regarding the future of MMTLP, mostly due to the short squeezes that are expected, and also because some are hopeful that the stock will be able to benefit from the high price of energy around the world. So the second reason might be a temporary situation because there is no guarantee that the oil price will remain that high, as that would assume that the conflict will persist over the years to come. With that being said, it also doesn't mean that once the conflict is resolved, the oil price would just collapse. Like no one is saying that. And I don't believe that the movement will be that brutal either. As far as the future price action is concerned, most people tend to believe that MMTLP will continue its upward momentum, which makes sense to me. In reality, even if the stock pullbacks a little bit, let's say by 10 or 15%, that shouldn't be anything surprising at all. So, regarding the shareholder composition, currently there's about 46 million shares owned by institutional investors. And this is a good sign because it shows that there is significant institutional ownership and trust in this company's long-term future. Usually the reason why we want to look at like whether there's a lot of institutional investors in a stock is because institutional investors tend to be very diversified with their portfolios. So they will not be interested in rapid gains or losses of specific companies. They will usually, commit something like 1% or much less than 1% of their portfolio on a company. And in this case, even if the stock collapses, if they don't see any specific reason to pull out, they will not leave the stock. And this is very different from the retail investors who have a tendency of jumping in and out because they're overexposed to a stock that's not supposed to be a main position of the portfolio. Institutional investors tend not to do this. So, speaking of MMTLP, it's also worth investing in the long term based on its current price, the potentials showing, what the future lies ahead, and also because the solidity of its proposal. I believe that this is a legit company that can, how can I put this, beyond the perspectives of short squeezes, can deliver investors, handsome returns if they're patient. So regarding the short size and the short squeeze, the simple idea is the short position is open with borrowed shares from brokers, and they have to be paid back at a later date, hopefully when the share price has gone down. As long as the positions remain open, the company would have to pay financial fees to keep them open. In other words, the longer it drags, the less money they're going to make. Not to mention that the risk is immense because the loss potential for short positions is infinite, whereas the loss potential for a long position is whenever the entry price is and zero. So if the share price goes up, there would be a major incentive to redeem as fast as possible, which is the same case for MMTLP after the S1 approval. The shorts would be compelled to close their positions in order to avoid further losses, and by doing so, they buy back the shares, which will push the price even higher. So, regarding my recommendation as things currently stand, MMTLP will be making new highs in the days to come, and it'll really depend on your investor profile. If you're risk averse and you don't want to, risk too much in this current environment, which I totally understand, I would recommend to enter now and to profit from the swing trade that's going to probably occur within the next few weeks. Once this is done, once the exit has occurred, and the profit target can be anywhere between 30 to 50%. So once this is done, you can use the profit to invest in MMTLP in the long term, or you can even go to MMAT, the metamaterial company, and then you can stay in for the long term. And even if the position collapses, it would matter far less because it is the profit that you have made from this trade. So it would be, you would be a lot more comfortable with committing for the long term. And the second option is to just buy in now and to stay for the long term all the way through. This would be if you believe that MMTLP has a real potential in the future from a fundamental perspective, which I do. So these are the two options for whether you're risk averse or risk tolerant. The maximum exposure that I would be recommending is between 1 and 3% of your portfolio.